Hello, I'm Molly Hughes in the Denver Post newsroom with Behind the Headlines. Today we're talking about a lawsuit filed by the states of Nebraska and Oklahoma to eliminate recreational marijuana in Colorado. Denver Post reporter John Ingold is working this story. He joins me now to talk about it. First of all, what is this suit alleging?
Sure. So this suit, it's been filed directly with the U.S. Supreme Court, which is a little bit of an unusual way of doing things. And it basically alleges two key arguments. The first is that Colorado's legalization of marijuana, that it sort of can't stand alongside the federal prohibition of marijuana. And so that then, the suit alleges, violates something in the U.S. Constitution called the Supremacy Clause, which says that the U.S. Constitution, federal laws are sort of supreme over state laws. The second part of the lawsuit, and this is really where it's a little more detailed, it talks about the harm that these states claim they've suffered as a result of marijuana legalization. So this, it mostly includes issues related to enforcement. These are states, Nebraska and Oklahoma, where marijuana is still very much illegal. So it mostly includes people who they claim are bringing marijuana from Colorado into their states and then are being arrested or being thrown in jail or being prosecuted in their states, and sort of the costs associated with that.
Okay, and I know our state attorney general, John Suthers, says he has responded to this, so explain what he's saying about it.
Sure, so we haven't filed a formal response. Our state government hasn't yet.
Yeah.
John Suthers, our attorney general, who is, he was opposed to Amendment 64, he was opposed to marijuana legalization, but he said he will defend it, his office will defend it, he's going out of office soon. And he said in a statement today, he said, quote, "We believe this suit is without merit, and we will vigorously defend against it in the U.S. Supreme Court."
Okay, so we'll have to follow and just kind of see how things evolve. But in the meantime, I know you talk to a lot of legal experts who, you know, when you're doing stories like this, who weigh in. What are they saying, if anything?
Yeah, so the legal experts I've talked to so far, they're maybe a little bit skeptical of this lawsuit. They kind of question whether these two states have what would be called standing, sort of the authority to go into a court and challenge laws.
Like a stakeholder, or are they
right.
even a stakeholder?
So they question whether these two states are going to have standing to be able to go in and argue something that's based on basically what would be a violation against the federal law.
In other words, a federal entity would have to file the suit if it's going to be filed.
Right, that's part of the question there, is whether these two states can go in and say, this violates the Supremacy Clause, whether they have the gravitas to be able to do that. The other question has to do with whether, because the harms that these states are alleging are sort of caused by, in part, Colorado's legalization of marijuana, also in part their own criminalization of marijuana. And so there's this question of whether Colorado can be sort of punished for doing something that creates more work for other states based on their own laws. So I think we're going to have to see. There's sort of a question of whether this could end up maybe not striking down the use and possession elements of Amendment 64, but just the stores, the regulation of the stores that sell them, whether whether it's going to stand at all.
So it sounds like we're going to have to really ride this out to see how things take shape. But already I think people are talking about, what does this mean for Washington State or Oregon and Alaska, who have passed laws to legalize recreational marijuana?
Sure. It's a lot of complex legal arguments, and depending on how things end up being ruled on here, it could have pretty big national implications. You mentioned, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, they all have or are implementing legalization laws that also include a commercial aspect to it, that have stores that can sell marijuana to people who are over 21. So it could have an impact on those states' laws. It could have an impact on the 23 states that have medical marijuana laws. Or it could be dismissed and not have much of an impact on anything.
Okay. Well, one thing we do know is that it had an impact on social media today, because it just lit up on Twitter with this, and you can see a lot of that on our cannabis column at denverpost.com. But I know you follow some of that too. What are people saying?
Yeah, it's, I guess it's a little bit of both sides. There's been a lot of jokes, I think particularly from people in Colorado making a lot of Nebraska jokes. But there's been some support for it. People who are excited to see this. People who think that Colorado's law is sort of unfair to the neighboring states who maybe have to suffer some consequences because of legalization. There's been a fair amount of criticism, a little bit of armchair legal analysis. It's kind of the whole smorgasbord.
Okay. Anything else you want to add about it?
No, I think that's it.
All right. John Ingold, thanks for breaking this down for us.
Thanks.
All right. So you can follow John's story, and it will continue to unfold, of course, as we've been talking about. You can follow this at denverpost.com, and also on the cannabis tab at denverpost.com, you'll see related stories, including how people are responding to today's lawsuit. That is today's Behind the Headlines. I'm Molly Hughes in the Denver Post newsroom with DPTV.